Simon Orange on pole position when he gives way to Tom Roach, and we heard from Sam Mayer-Loughnane briefly in the 50 Mercedes when he gives way to James Wallace. They'll be ones to watch out for because they have less time to spend in the pits come the pit window because of where they finished last time out at Brands Hatch. So we'll give you the grid then as they head off on their final formation lap, and this is the way they line up with their starting drivers as well and the success seconds that they have to serve. Simon Orange starts from pole position. That car will be stationary in the pit lane for 80 seconds, and alongside is Sasha Kakad, who will be stationary for 95 when he gives way to Hugo Cook. Row 2 of the grid is Sam Mayer-Loughnane, 80 seconds in the pit lane, and alongside is Ian Logie. I think it's 80 seconds for that car as well because it is a new entrant for this weekend. Row 3 of the grid, Darren Young, that is going to be 105 seconds. The Century Motorsport BMW will be stationary, and alongside is Matt Topham, who is going to have to remain stationary for 95 when he hands over to Marcus Clutton. And row 4 of the grid, Mark Ratcliffe, that is going to be 105 seconds, and alongside Seamus Jennings, that will be 70. Row 5 of the grid, Gilbert Yates starts. That is stationary for, I think that's 60. I haven't quite had time to refer to another piece of paper and do the maths. It's 75 for Patrick Collins that's alongside. And row 6 of the grid, Matty Evans when he gives way to Kev Clark, 80 seconds in the pit lane alongside Paul Bailey. That car will be stationary for 100. Row 7, Chris Murphy's goes solo, 70 seconds in the pit lane. Alongside is Chris Hart, 60 seconds for that car. Row 8 of the grid, Phil Carter, he'll hand over to Mikey Broadhurst, the pro, 85 seconds, and it's the same for James Guess, who sits alongside on that outside of the 8th row of the grid. Row 9 of the grid, John Curry when he gives way to Phil Keane, 85 seconds, but Tim Docker giving way to Jordan Albert. That car will be stationary for 100. And the final row of the grid, Doc Bush, 70 seconds in the pit lane. David Franklin when he gives way to Ed Bridle will be stationary for 80 seconds. If I've had the time to note all of that down before the race got underway, it was all rather close to get through all of that. So they're on their final formation lap, and they'll get themselves then into neat 2x2 order for this one. Piers Pryor will remain down there in the pit lane with Amber for this race, so they'll be able to pick up on anything that happens in the pit lane, and also no doubt we'll be chatting to a few drivers once they have got out of the cars following the pit stop window opening up for them. But we are about to get our second race of the weekend underway. This is going to be round 10 of the championship, and our first of 2 pit stop races over the course of this weekend, because the second pit stop race comes up tomorrow. Now, the race win earlier on today in the sprint race went the way of the number 67 Orange Racing powered by JMH McLaren. It was in the hands of Tom Roach because it was a sprint race, it was just solo driver. Tom set the fastest lap in the race, and therefore that is why that car starts from pole position this time through. Sasha Kakad, who drives the Audi that sits alongside, Hugo Cook brought that car to second in the race earlier on, but its lap time also sees it line up on the front row of the grid. So colours then, it's dark blue and orange for the car on pole, it's largely red and white for the car that sits alongside. Row 2 of the grid, it's black and red for Sam Mayer-Loughnane alongside the Dayglow orange car of Ian Logie. In row 3 of the grid, it's red, black and white for Darren Young's BMW alongside is Matt Topham in the largely orange McLaren. So round 10 of the 2023 GT Cup Championship is about to get itself underway here at Snetterton. The lights go out and the huge pack of cars charge their way up towards the corner. Ian Logie is already off and into the barriers very heavily on the right hand side. Couldn't see what caused that, but Ian Logie straight into the barriers on the left hand side of the circuit, and that McLaren has come to rest in the middle of the circuit with suspension damage, so I don't think we're going to have much choice but to throw a safety car very, very early on. The race will still continue for the meantime. There's also, I think, some barrier damage from where the car made contact with the barriers. There's also then, by the look of things, Seamus Jennings just touching the tail end of the Lamborghini of Matty Evans. But the race still continuing for the moment, albeit no red flags are coming out. I'm not surprised we've gone red flag rather than safety car, because not only did Ian Logie take quite a ride into the barriers, but when the car made contact with the barriers, I did see the barriers moved backwards, and therefore they'll not be in a fully vertical position. The one good thing, Ian Logie is out of the car and is absolutely fine. That is the only thing that's important, and he is absolutely fine. As ever, the cars are built very sturdily to all of the latest safety regulations. The drivers wear their crash helmets and their head and neck support as well, and for what was a side impact into the barriers, the seats wrap around the drivers a lot as well, so there's a lot of lateral protection as well that just goes on, so that will have cushioned the blow for Ian Logie. But that McLaren, I'm afraid to say, looks slightly second hand. The one good thing is that Ian doesn't look second hand at all, and the barriers did their job, is that they started to lessen the impact and because the barriers did move, that's a good thing, because it does soften the impact of the car. And then of course Ian went down the road a bit more as it dissipated any remaining energy in the car. So what we now need to do is our fantastic Snetterton marshals will be tasked with sweeping up, clearing up. The circuit staff who always present any of the MSV circuits, in particular Snetterton, immaculately, nicely mown grass, and they just look tidy and neat and polished, the circuits. So what we do need to do then is sort those barriers out, because as you can see on the right hand side of the shot, those barriers should be in a fully vertical position. You can see that where the impact was made, that it has affected not the integrity of those barriers but the positioning of them, so they will need to be placed and manoeuvred back into a fully upright position before we can go racing again. That might mean that then there's some additional diagonal bracing that needs to be placed behind them, so this is going to be a reasonably long delay, which gives me the opportunity to chat about our marshals, because I am an ambassador for the British Motorsport Marshals Club, the BMMC. They are by far the most popular club for marshals to join in the UK, and if you want to become a marshal, doesn't matter whether it's a GT Cup race, any circuit would be delighted to have you, any race meeting would be delighted to have you. And the easiest thing to do is sign up to what's called a taster day. Log on to marshals.co.uk, sign up to a taster day there, and you can pick a circuit that's near to you. You get a guided tour around the whole venue in the morning by an experienced marshal, and then you'll head out onto circuit with a team around you for the afternoon who will tell you what you need to do. By the look of things there, now Sasha Kakad brought the Audi into the pit lane, which is not what you would do unless there was a problem. It straight away went up onto the air jacks, and then the dollies were placed underneath it, which does suggest that there's an issue with the Audi. Now, the Audi was directly ahead of Ian Loggie's car, and was that where contact was made, potentially, between Audi and McLaren? I'm not suggesting there was, but there are some scuff marks on that corner, and the Audi that's come into the pit lane is being inspected on both sides, so maybe there was just a little touch, maybe, which was what caused Ian to head into the barriers. The team are looking around it. There's Hugo Cook inspecting what's going on as well. But such a shame to see that Audi in the pit lane, and a big shame to see the McLaren stricken where it is. Yeah, so marshals.co.uk, marshals.co.uk, you sign up to a taster day, you get a guided tour around all the different areas where you can work. So it's not just on the individual marshals posts, of course we have race control, we have the assembly area, we have the pit lane, we have Parc Fermé where the cars go after they've been out on circuit, we have scrutineering, which is all the technical and safety checks that go on as well. So there's a range of different areas, the starting grid, where you can get involved in marshalling. And the good thing is, you get as close to the racing as possible without the expense of competing, and it's a good camaraderie, hugely experienced marshals that you'll be meeting on your first day who will absolutely put you at ease. And the one good thing about the taster days when you sign up for them on marshals.co.uk is that you're not the only person doing it. There'll be loads of other people that are doing it exactly the same as you. So if you want to get involved in motorsport, maybe can't afford to race, why not try marshalling? What have you got to lose? Marshals.co.uk, the official website for the British Motorsport Marshals Club, and we thank them because we couldn't go racing without them, and they will very quickly and very efficiently clear up this incident out there on circuit. You can see on the left of your screen we've got the breakdown crews there. The medical crew are just leaving the scene because Ian will have been given a mandatory checkup. You have an impact accident, you have to have a mandatory checkup just to check that everything is fine, and then you'll get released from the medical centre with a piece of paper that just confirms that you were showing no signs of anything, of all the obvious things that you could, concussion or anything like that. And straight away out the car, it's always brilliant to see. Then the marshals come around and sweep up the debris. The recovery crew will pick up the car and make sure that that is brought back to initially probably the scrutineering area, so that the scrutineers and technical advisors can assess the damage on it. And then it gets returned to the team thereafter, who will then do the same thing, assess the damage on it and establish as to when that car can be rebuilt. Can it be rebuilt overnight, ready for tomorrow? 76 Racing, a very professional team, will have a look at that and will very quickly to be able to decide, yes, we can do it. It'll either be yes, we can do it, or no, we can't, will be the first thing. If the yes, we can do it overnight, then the next thing is, do we have the parts? Are they here on the truck? If the answer to that is yes, then that straight away means work starts immediately. If the answer to that is no, then the next question is, do any of the other teams running a McLaren here have the parts? And if the answer to that is no, then it's on the phone to the McLaren factory. Do you have the parts? But it wouldn't surprise me if we see that car back out later on over the course of tomorrow. It will be a late night for the team, but they will do what they can for it. You can see it being winched onto the back of the recovery truck. And then you also will have seen the telehandler coming into shot as well. That will be utilised to repair the circuit furniture, to make sure that those barriers and the uprights for the barriers, which obviously got bent backwards with the impact, are in a fully vertical position. And then once they are fully vertical, are they going to remain fully vertical? Do we need any additional bracing behind them? So there's lots of things, and all of this is all going on with all radio communication to race control as well. So you might think it's a quiet period whilst all of these cars are on the grid. Not at all for the officials it isn't, because they will be wanting to minimise any delays. So I'm looking at the marshal that's trying to jump and catch the red flag. It wasn't quite tall enough, it just made me giggle. They'll be wanting to make sure they minimise any delays, because of course it's not just GT Cup that's racing here at Snetterton this weekend. There's a raft of other supporting races going on as well, and we need to get through all of the racing timetable before we get to 6:30, which will be the curfew where racing activity has to halt at most circuits, not all, but most circuits. So you can see there's still work to be done there. So the circuit maintenance team inspecting the barriers. There's no way that barrier with manpower is going to be pushed back vertical. The Motorsport UK stewards and the clerk of the course will also want to be satisfied that the barriers are safe. And you can see, so the telehandler will very carefully make sure that it gets to the right bit of the Armco barrier. It pulls the barriers back into that vertical position where they need to be, and then further inspection will be done as to what else then needs doing. So as those barriers have moved, then there will then be additional chocks placed behind and wedged behind them to make sure that those barriers then remain in that vertical position. Now that will just be to ensure they are where they need to be and are safe to be there, but what will probably happen is those barriers will get a more permanent repair stroke replacement done overnight. There's the Audi in the pit lane, so there was a little scuff to the front left corner of the Audi, but you can also see that the front right corner has also taken a scuff as well. So I do wonder whether there was a pincer effect, really, that things just got a little bit too tight and the Audi was probably pinched on one side and the other as the lights went out, and then too many cars wanting the same piece of tarmac at the same time was something had to give. And unfortunately on this occasion it was poor old Ian Loggy that had to give at the wheel of the McLaren, and Sasha Kakat's out the car, so that tells you everything you need to know now. So it looks as though the Audi is out, and that is a shame because that car was leading the GT3 Championship, the Group GT3 Championship. So with Sasha Kakat out of the car, it's not going to be a third win of the season for himself and Hugo Cook. The Audi is going to non-score for the first time this season, because it has been a regular point scoring car. It's not necessarily finished in the top 6 overall in every race, but it's been consistent. There's only been, I think, 3 occasions so far out of the 9 races that it's not finished in the top 6, but even then it scored good points in its group. So more work going on with the barriers. The rest of the grid still waiting patiently with news with regards to a restart. There's no official notification as yet as to when we'll get the race back underway. As soon as possible, but as soon as it's safe to do so are the 2 answers. So I think the barriers are nearly there now. There's a lot of chocks being placed behind them just to make sure that they remain where they are. Big sledgehammer to help with that, just to make sure that we've got them where they need to be. And it looks like we're going to be down to, rather than the 20 cars, it looks like we're going to be down to 18 now, because the Audi we have lost, and for sure we know we've lost the reigning British GT champion Ian Loggy. So that's the car that was scheduled to have started second on the grid and the car that was scheduled to have started 4th on the grid. So There's going to be a nice gap when the lights go out at the restart for Matt Toppen, who is 6th on the grid, to be able to accelerate into, because whilst he's 6th on the grid, he's not got any cars ahead of him on that side of the track, so there's a big gap that he can disappear off into. And equally as much, it's probably good for Sam Mayer-Lochnan as well, who's 3rd on the grid, because he can then either sit behind Simon Orange, the pole sitter, on the run up towards Richie's corner, or he can jink out and know that he's probably fairly safe to get out to the left hand side and sweep in towards Richie's corner, because there should be a gap alongside him where Ian Loggy would have been. So it'd be interesting to see as to how the dynamic unfolds at the start. So that's a car from GT3 we've lost, a car from GTO we've lost, because the Ian Loggy McLaren was running in Group GTO this weekend as they've taken the restrictors off the engine on it. So it's not a GT3 compliant car, so it has to move into Group GTO, the open specification. And we're still awaiting some sort of news. Planned restart time is 15:35 is what we hear. Well, it's 15:40 now, so we've gone past that. So I think it is just taking a while longer just to make sure that the circuit is safe to go racing, that the final bits of sweeping up are being done. There will probably be another track inspection as well that's taking place. The one positive thing is that all the drivers are in their cars still, I think. So, yeah, looks like they're all still in their cars and ready to go. Spectators are also choosing their position to watch the race from, gives them a bit more time to pick their spots. And it looks like barrier repairs are as good as done now, so I think we should be able to get a quick replay of what happened at the start. So let's just have a quick look. Well, there's the contact which pitched Ian Loggy into the barrier. As you see, then the car didn't come to a hold, so he moves over to the right hand side there. And then there was some subsequent contact as he came back over. Yeah, you could see some bits come off the Audi there. So definitely there was some sort of contact between the Audi and the McLaren. I'm sure it was absolutely accidental and totally unintended, but it was just tight. So Ian Loggy moved towards the pit wall and then came back again. So there was, just that little lightest of touches, but as we've spoken about before when Piers Pryor has joined me in commentary, it's fine margins, and when the cars are on the very ragged edge and you're accelerating and having to look at what's going on around you, occasionally, you just end up with two cars wanting the same piece of tarmac, and just the lightest touch is enough to pitch somebody off and into the barriers. So hopefully we're not too far away. You can see there is the big gap on the right hand side of the screen. That's the left hand side of the grid, where the Audi is absent from the front row, where the McLaren is absent from the second row. No additional information with regards to a restart time as yet, so still saying planned restart time was around 10 minutes ago. So 2 green flag laps it's also now showing on the gantry I can spot as well, so it looks as though we're going to get couple of additional green flag laps. I would imagine what would happen, what usually happens, and again it's only me second guessing, but when you have an incident and then you get 2 green flag laps, some of that will be to add some extra temperature into the tyres, the extra green flag lap, but usually what happens is when the cars complete the first green flag lap and come over the start finish line, at the point they come over the start finish line at the end of the first lap, wouldn't surprise me if that's when the 50 minutes starts ticking away. So the second green flag lap would be eating into the true race time in reality. I think that is probably the way it would work, but we'll wait and see and confirm that at the end of the first green flag lap is going to be the easiest way to do it, because the clock will tick down. Simple as that. So I think the barrier repairs are pretty much done. BMW safety car is back at the front of the pack once more. No obvious signs that the teams are aware that they need to start strapping the drivers in as yet, because I'll see on the car of Simon Orange that both doors were open. So no obvious signs of doors being closed and engines being fired as yet. So I think we're a few minutes away as yet from getting the race back underway. And for the drivers this is difficult now as well, because it's frustrating, they want to get going, and equally as much, 3-minute board goes up, so we're not that far away now. 3-minute board is held aloft, but equally they'll be rather warm in their cars. They want to get the car circulating so that they can cool off a little bit. So once the car's rolling, then at least you get not much, but you either get the airflow through, or as we heard from Hugo Cook in the ill-fated Audi as it is, that some of these cars do have aircon fitted, so at least when you're off the accelerator and onto the brakes, you can get at least a burst of cool air coming through. Piers Pryor has made the dash from the pit lane back to this side of the circuit to join me in commentary for some of this race. I know you've got other things coming up that you need to be doing as well, so I don't think you're going to be with me for the whole race, but unfortunate start to that one, and you probably wouldn't have seen the replay of it, but straight away that's two cars that were potential race winners out from the front row of the grid. The Audi and Ian Loggy with his damage in the barriers.
Yeah, it's really disappointing and unfortunate to see those drivers go out, and I didn't see the ins and the outs of the incident. I haven't actually seen a replay, so all I saw was shining from the pit lane, everyone go ooh, and then a big plume of dust go into the air, and I thought, oh no, that doesn't bode well, but glad to hear everyone is okay. As far as we're aware, everyone sort of walked away. Of course, they'll get checked over in the medical centre. Of course, there's medical staff ready, waiting to aid anyone if they need it. But yeah, disappointing to see those cars damaged. Hopefully, the damage is only superficial, so we could see them out again tomorrow. But that remains to be seen, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the Audi, it looks superficial. You wouldn't have heard on commentary, but I was saying, the first thing that 76, the team that run in Loggy, who's sharing with Logan Hanna, will be doing is they'll inspect the damage, and it'll be, have we got the parts? If the answer is yes, crack on straight away. If the answer is no, then the next question is, do any of the other teams here with a McLaren have the parts? If the answer is yes, you crack on with the repairs. If the answer is no, it's a phone call to the McLaren factory and someone dispatch. But if they can get that car out tomorrow, it might be an all-nighter, but they'll do it, won't they?
They will, of course, and the teams want to go racing. They're here to go racing, and the guys that work on the cars, I have so much respect for all the mechanics and engineers that do everything on the car, because they're often the last people here at the circuit and the first back in the morning, and a lot of it is a thankless task, and they do an excellent job, and without them, these drivers wouldn't be able to go racing. We wouldn't have a show.
The casing point is the black and the red Mercedes that's there on its own on row 2 now. Drive Tack with Track Focus put in an all-nighter last weekend at Donington Park because they had some damage to the casing on the timing chain on the car as they head off on the green flag lap, and they worked until 5 o'clock in the morning to change the engine, having hired a race facility workshop in Derby to bring the car away from the track, to change the engine in there, which they'd got from Mercedes. Worked all night, and the first time they actually ran a lap in that car was the first lap of the race. They didn't get a warm-up in the morning, they didn't have time, so and they worked until 5 in the morning. They looked shattered when I saw them at the circuit, and this is only 7 days ago, the same team.
And they're still racing here today. We know what an absolute team of troopers that is. And a little thing from the grid, actually, that not many people at home would have seen, but the car on pole, the McLaren 720, when it pulled into its grid spot, actually ran over the splitter of the Drive Tack AMG.
Oh no!
Yeah. Luckily, no damage done other than a scuff to the paintwork on the corner. Everyone looked concerned for a second, because all I heard was a big bang as the splitter pinged back up after it had been run over.
It is tight, isn't it? You don't have much lock on a big race car when it's going slowly. It needs to get some speed up to improve the lock of it, and it is tight to try and get in the grid slots, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good job you moved, because you even said we'll move out the way before we get run over.
God, yeah, it was close. Because they don't hang about coming out the pit box, Mark, as well, I can tell you that. They fly away from those pit boxes, trying to keep as much temperature in the tyres as possible.
That's why I'm in the safe position of being just stuck here in the commentary box, and because A, I won't get run over, and B, I've got the face for radio, so that's why they put me here.
Don't believe that for a second, Mark. I get the pleasure of looking at you all weekend. So no one at home gets that pleasure.
I'm sure the word begins with a P, but I'm not sure it's pleasure. Anyway, the cars are on their formation lap, and it's going to be the first of 2 green flag laps. Again, I was suggesting, yes, we've lost 2 cars, but again, let's try and see how the race might unfold. If you're Matt Topham, you're 6th on the grid, but you haven't got anybody ahead of you on your side, so you can't be out of position at the start, but what you can do is make sure you get a really good launch and try and get up there and catch them, because you've not got anybody else to worry about. And equally as much for Sam Mayer-Loughnane, who is 3rd on the grid. He doesn't have a car to his left, so if he gets a good start, he can jink that way straight away to try and take a nice wide sweep in towards Ritchie's. So it does affect the way these cars now, with gaps around them, will start.
Yeah, it definitely does, and it's a bit of a weird situation when you have to sit back and not take up a position where, as a racing driver, your instinct is to fill the gap.
Yeah.
And there's a gap 2 cars long in front of him, and he's thinking, he saw how excited he was on the grid as well, and he'll be thinking, right, I need to stay alongside the car beside me, but it'll definitely mean that people on the inside will have an opening to move to the outside before turn 1, which, I don't know, maybe will mean that there might be a move into the Melbourne hairpin first lap potentially.
Wilson hairpin, yeah.
Wilson changed name. Was it Melbourne? No, Montreal.
It was Montreal.
Sorry, I've been calling it Melbourne all day. It's Montreal, isn't it?
It was Montreal. It's Wilson now.
Oh, they've changed the name. Okay, well, there you go. The Wilson hairpin. I've been schooled. The school of Mark Werrell.
Yes, it was named in memory of Justin Wilson after his sad passing. So yeah, that was why they renamed it from the Montreal hairpin to Wilson. Yeah,
nice touch. I think actually I spoke briefly to the grid, the start-finish marshals as well when I was doing the mad dash across the track to get back into the comms box, and they said that both front row drivers actually jumped the start, and that's potentially why they were going. It was a bit messy because they were at full speed before they'd actually shown the green flag.
Right. Yeah, shouldn't be the case, should it? Yeah, you should maintain your speed until the lights go off. So let's see whether we get a nice clean start for this one. And yes, the clock is ticking already, so we are now already 49 minutes remaining in the race. So remember, the cars running at the sharp end pit first. They pit between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race. The cars that are running in Group GTH, so the likes of the McLaren 570Ss, the GT4 Mercedes, the Aston Martin, they will all pit between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race. So I did say I thought the clock would tick when they started their second formation lap, and indeed that is the case. So it is. We are racing now in reality, but we are racing under safety car conditions. However, it will be not a single file restart, it will be a 2x2 proper start of the race start, if that makes sense.
Indy start.
Indy start.
Indy start. I like that when people say it's an Indy start 2x2. It makes it sound more interesting. But no, it shouldn't have made a difference to any of the pit stops. The tyres will still be well in their window. They've only done sort of like half a lap really at racing pace, and with this extra formation lap, everyone will be ready and raring to go. Looking at them, yeah, you can see them weaving there to try and maintain any tyre temperature they can, or get any tyre temperature they can, even though they were. Because I think about it, they were actually sat on the grid for quite a long time without tyre warmers. Whereas normally they actually have the tyres in tyre warmers and tyre ovens until a couple of a minute or so before they go on circuit. So it's not often that these cars have to go from completely cold. They weren't completely cold.
No, they'll still have some residual heat, won't they? Yeah,
but somewhat ambient.
But yeah, right thing to do. There is that is Paul Bailey's beautiful Lamborghini that he's acquired, whilst the Brabham is still being worked on in the workshop. So that is a GT3 Lamborghini, again de-restricted to runs in Group GTO. It looks great with the black and the Dayglow yellow livery. What you can't see on the camera is it's not black, it is raw carbon. So you can see all of the weaves of the carbon. God, that looks good, doesn't it?
I have a soft spot for raw carbon. It is something that I very much enjoy, and if you do get a chance to come down and physically visit any of the GT Cup runs, and do it, because these cars look even better in person.
Let's have another go. We're getting round 10 of the championship underway. The lights go out now and they head up towards Richie's corner for the first time, and Simon Orange does exactly what I thought, moves all the way over because he knows that there's a gap there. It's going to be Sam Mayer-Loughnan who's there in second place, and it wasn't a brilliant start for Matt Topham. Maybe he was just a little bit cautious. Matty Evans runs wide coming out of Richie's corner, so it's going to be Darren Leung who is now up into third place, and it's Mark Radcliffe in his McLaren that's up into fourth place at the moment. Matt Topham is there in fifth position, but arguably he ought to be higher up because of course there was a great big gap that was ahead of him on the grid.
Yeah, we saw Charlotte Gilbert getting involved at turn one and nearly coming to blows with another driver, but everyone just about managing to get through safely this time. The number 9 BMW now having a look on the back of the DriveTac AMG, not quite getting the move done this time.
No, so that's Darren Leung, who is looking to try and attack Sam Mayer-Loughnan, the Irishman, but nothing doing as yet. Seamus Jennings, the man from Belfast at the wheel of the GCAT Racing Porsche, going well in the early stages. He'll hand the car over to Greg Caton, and because of their driver pairing, that'll be a car that won't remain in the pit lane particularly for long, because they are amateur and drivers, the pair of those. So Simon Orange already with a big advantage over the squabble that's going on for second and third place. Has Darren Leung in the BMW got the legs on the Merc? Yes, he has. Darren Leung in the BMW, the Century Motorsport run car, gains the place further back. Wow, that was close, wasn't it? Mark Radcliffe just fended away the aspirations of Matt Topham.
Yeah, Topham two wheels on the grass going into Nelson, and not quite getting the move done. They're getting a good little chop there, but it was all fair racing by the looks of it, and they all live to fight another day. And then, yeah, it looks like the gap to the MG in second place has just opened out a little bit in the last sector. A good second part of the lap for Mayor Lachlan.
We've got, by the look of things, Gilbert Yates leading Group GTC in the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini in the early stages. As over the start-finish line comes Simon Orange. Lap number 1 completed. Darren Young there in second place. Matt Topham again looking to try and attack Mark Radcliffe, but the Optimum Motorsport car stays just ahead of the Enduro Motorsport machine. Matt Topham weaves one way, weaves the other, as Mark Radcliffe ran a little bit wide coming out of Richie's corner, but there's no real gap to squeeze through. So for the moment, Matt Topham still hanging on to 5th place, rather frustratingly. He wants 4th at the moment. If they start to squabble, don't rule out the fact that the GCAT Racing Porsche in the hands of the Northern Irishman, Seamus Jennings, might join him.
Yeah, Jennings will be licking his lips looking at this, thinking, we saw the brake lights come on early of Topham there, because he had to sweep, he went to the inside and then realised that door had closed by the time he got there, got on the brakes, tried to have a look to the outside. Good defensive driving, but very much on the limit of how many moves you can make there. Let's see if this battle rages on.
Yeah, Matt Topham doing a good job, considering he's not driven a GT3 car before. He's acquitted himself superbly, and I think Amber made the point, as I made in the sprint race as well, having spoken to Marcus Clutton. Marcus Clutton was very, very positive about the way that Matt Topham has just conducted himself this weekend for the first time in a GT3 car. So down the Bentley straight comes Simon Orange. Last time through, the gap from lead McLaren back to the second place BMW M4 of Darren Young was hovering just over 1.5 seconds, 1.65 seconds between the pair of them. But through this lap so far, the BMW has eaten into that advantage. Group GTH lead heading down towards us now, and by the look of things, Group GTH is being led by Chris Hart, as it was in the sprint race, the number 69 Make Happen Mercedes, leading the way.
Yeah, doing what it has done a lot of times this year, which is get a good start and pull away. And the BMW once again in the Group GTO car getting involved in this fight and having a great time, but almost as if we carried on from the previous race with the 2nd, 3rd and 4th all together, the same 3. So there is the Make Happen Racing leader, then we've got the Group GTO and Group GTC Lamborghini, and then the 3 of them almost inseparable, with the Paddock Motorsport car not far behind as it was in race 1.
Yeah, so that's 2nd, 3rd, 4th again, all in GTH all together. There's Doc Bush, just former motorcycle racer in the beautiful, almost Martini-esque liveried car, heading over the start-finish line. Here comes the Aston Martin in the hands of James Guess. He's got Phil Carter tucked right behind him. This is for 2nd and 3rd in Group GTH at the moment. Then you've got John Curry in the 2nd of the 2 Make Happen Racing Mercedes just behind. And then, as you alluded to, then not far off that is Tim Docker at the wheel of his McLaren. Fastest lap of the race on the first flying lap went the way of the 2nd place BMW of Darren Young, 1 minute 49.889. The gap wasn't it, 1.650 seconds. It's now just down to 7/10.
Yeah, that gap coming down. It's a good first sector as well. We're going to look for a move here as well. Greystone GT4 Group GTH car, looking at the inside of James Guess in the the Aston Martin. God, there's so many A's. Aston Martin, but that gap has opened out on the exit once again. And you mentioned in the previous race that Aston Martin is very strong in the second half of the lap, but it's got good aero, but potentially not the fastest in a straight line.
No, not at all. It's good through the quick corners though, so it's the final sector of the lap where the Aston Martin really comes into its own, having spoken to factory driver Tom Canning, who shares the car with James Guess. I spoke to him earlier on this morning. So along the Bentley straight, and Philip Carter jinks out from behind the slipstream. He was gaining there, but I think that's more of a distracting tactic. The McLaren is right onto the boot lid and the coattails of James Guess again as they thread their way through Brundle and Nelson. They are squabbling, which is just allowing John Curry to stay in touch as well. But out front, it's Simon Orange that leads the way. The gap was down to 0.4 of a second between himself and Darren Young last time through. Now Darren Young is in for just a one-off event really, because he'll be racing here in another championship in a couple of weekends' time, and he's almost using this as additional track time, but he's making a good impression, is he, Darren Young?
Doing very well so far. I mean, that last lap, purple second, purple third sector. Doing all he can at the moment, clawing in the gap, but as you mentioned a lot of, all the time, Mark, catching is one thing, passing is very much another. Yeah,
and of course, modern GT cars, modern GT3 cars, they are quite aero dependent as well, and it is quite a big aero wash that comes off the cars, isn't it? So of course, the closer Darren Young gets, the more he loses the nice clean air running over the front of his car, the more then it overworks the Pirelli tyres, and therefore all of a sudden the slower you start to go and you drop back away again.
Yes, it's one of those sort of ebbs and flows a little bit, but it depends on the section of the circuit. So, for example, turn 1, you will lose a bit of front end, but in the middle sector, it wouldn't be too bad because the speed isn't too high, and the faster you go, the more aerodynamic load you have on the car, which means the more you have to lose when you're behind another car. But this sector here, maybe it'll be quite hard to follow as closely through Coram because the corner goes on for so long. And the fun thing about Coram as well is, especially in these longer pit stop races, you can push the car really, really hard through here, but if you push too hard at the start of the race, your front left tyre will be absolutely toast by the end.
Yeah, absolutely. It really loads up, doesn't it, around there? But it is a brilliant corner. I love Coram, and it's so difficult to then get the car stopped and get it rotating into Murray's as well. It's a really tricky part of the circuit, that one, as it is down at Brundle and Nelson as well, where you're trying to turn the car and brake at the same time. And of course, the car doesn't like that. It wants one or the other. It doesn't like both. So it's a very different approach to those two corners, isn't it?
100%. Completely agree that sort of Coram and last corner combination is probably one of the hardest, I'd say, to get right. In the UK. I mean, the hardest I've driven, because you have to brake while turning, roll onto the brakes, which causes the car to feel like it's nervous, but then you have a weight. You basically have everything going on. You're braking, turning, and having weight transfer from one side of the car to the other, while also having a dip and slightly off, and the undulation changes. It's about as difficult as it gets, and that's why you often see cars getting a bad exit out of the last corner.
But that's why we love it, because it's difficult. So Darren Young, having closed the gap down to 0.4 of a second, well, it's increased back up to 0.75 of a second now, as Simon Orange has responded. The fastest lap of the race, though, went that time through to the car in 5th place, number 77, the McLaren in the hands of Matt Topham. 1 minute 48.981 from Matt Topham. You can see there the lap-by-lap comparison of Simon Orange to Darren Young, so it has sort of chopped and changed around a little bit, but on the whole, in racing conditions, the Beamer has been just that little bit quicker. And again, I think through this sector he has just closed the gap up, not by much. They have pretty much matched each other for pace through sector 1 and sector 2, so if the gap varies, it's not going to be much more than it is at the moment, that 0.769 of a second, but they're about to come through and over the start-finish line. Complete lap number 5, 38 minutes remain.
Potentially that 7/10 is about the threshold of where the aerodynamic wash comes into play. But one thing that is pretty cool is that, again, as it was similarly in the first race, we've got McLaren from BMW, from AMG, Mercedes. So 3 different cars in the top 3, then again 2 McLaren. So great to see so many different cars fighting so close. And again, the BMW and the McLaren almost couldn't be 2 more different GT3 cars, could they? You've got a saloon car style, 5-door car, or in the form of the BMW, and then a full out-and-out supercar in the 720. It's all going wheel to wheel. As we see a group, is that a move for Group GTC? Nearly off the circuit. Oh no!
Yeah, Matty Evans just too quick going in towards Ritchie's, and what's that, a full 720-degree spin, if not more. That won't have done the Pirelli tyres much good either. He had just taken 2nd place in Group GTC from Patrick Collins, but yeah, that Lamborghini, after the big spin, fires it back up again. But I'd imagine those Pirellis might be slightly flat in places now. Slightly
flat and also quite dirty. So even if they aren't flat, they will take a few corners to get back up to full clean racing grip. As we see, that's the 999 there. That was the car that was involved in that, and the Group GTC getting overtaken around the outside. But clearly the Lamborghini took quite a bit too much speed into turn 1. And once you're on the marbles, Mark, and the car starts going, there's not a huge amount you can do.
Not a great deal you can do, no. So Matty Evans was a bit of a passenger there, yeah, just that little bit too much speed. Then you hit the marbles, and then around it goes, and there's nothing that you can do. So for Patrick Collins, he's got nothing to worry about now. For the battle of the McLarens, though, it looks as though Mark Radcliffe at the wheel of the Optimum Motorsports, number 27 McLaren, has now got a bit more daylight between himself and the charging Matt Topham. So the leading 5 heading up towards the conclusion of lap number 6. It's still Simon Orange that leads, and the Audi has been fixed of Sasha Kakad, so it might be 6 laps adrift. The one good thing is it's fixed, and that also allows them to check that whatever repairs they've done to that Audi do work, albeit maybe if you're going to come out of the pit lane, you stay the right side of the blend line.
Yeah, there's a solid blend line and then a dotted blend line to basically for safety reasons. It looked like Sasha Kakad. Oh no, that was loads of smoke coming out of the back of the Audi there.
Was it brakes though?
Was it a lock-up, or was it? Hopefully that was just tyres, because of maybe cold brakes, cold tyres. But there was a lot of smoke coming out of that car.
Yeah, there was. It looked like it was totally locked up. He's dabbing the brakes there. Now our race leaders are now amongst the traffic for the first time, so looks as though they are safely negotiating the first little bits of traffic. It's allowed the lead pair to just break away a shade more as they've put a lap on David Franklin's 24/7 prepared machine. So Simon Orient and Darren Leung still squabbling for the lead of the race. It's still hovering around 7/10 of a second. So I think you're absolutely right, Piers. A good point, very well made, is that that's the sort of bubble as to when you do and don't pick up the dirty air, round about 3/4 of a second back from the car ahead.
Yeah, which is quite a lot when you think about it, but it shows how much aerodynamic grip these GT3 cars do have. And what the driver in second place, Leung, will be feeling is he'll drive and the car will feel normal, and the closer he gets, especially in the faster corners, it just feels like you don't quite have the front grip that you're used to. Although saying that, this looks like he's closer in this middle sector of the lap than he has been for a while, as is the 5th place car of Topham on the back of Radcliffe. No, hang on, that's Radcliffe on the back of Wallace. My mistake.
Yeah, so that is so Sam May-Loughnane. No, it's Sam May-Loughnane who's driving that car.
Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, so it's Mark Radcliffe closing up onto the back of the Mercedes of Sam May-Loughnane, and then also, having fallen away, Matt Topham has caught back up again as well. So it's 2 for the lead, and then 3 fighting over 3rd, 4th and 5th place as they head over the start-finish line now. But it's still McLaren from BMW, from Mercedes, from McLaren, the top 5 at the moment. 6th place is Seamus Jennings at the wheel of the GCAT Racing Porsche. But I think whilst the race continues, we can hand you down to Amber, who's got some news in the pit lane.
So I just caught up with the team at JNS Racing with the Audi R8. Unfortunately, there was a broken steering arm. They did fix it in time, but they're a little bit worried about how it is going to perform, so they're not confident, but they have sent out Sasha again because they want to stay in the points.
Thanks, Amber. Yeah, so race continues, and Sam May-Loughnane will be driving the wheels off the Drive Tac Racing Mercedes to try and take these 2 McLarens that sit behind him at this stage. We've got, 33 minutes of the race still remaining, so we are heading towards the pit window opening shortly. A while to go yet still. This is a Group GTO battle as well, so this is for the lead of Group GTO. This is Paul Bailey in the Lamborghini fighting away with Chris Murphy. 2 cars which couldn't be any more different at the moment. Paul Bailey still trying to get used to the Lamborghini. He's got a range of different cars at his disposal, and he did say to me earlier on that the unrestricted Group GTO Lamborghini just takes a bit more of getting your head around it.
Yes, I imagine it does, especially coming from the cars that he's used before, and every car has its idiosyncrasies and ways of driving. I mean, as we mentioned on the grid with Amber, it's not only just the way you drive it, but also the teams have to get used to how to set it up as well, and also then the combination thereof, the driving and the setup, because you can change the setup to suit the driver, and also you can change the way that you drive to suit the car as well.
Yeah, well, Paul Bailey just managing to keep the Lamborghini ahead of Chris Murphy, who's flashing his lights. So Paul Bailey, his first race weekend in a Lamborghini Huracan. We saw him out in the Brabham early part of the season. We've seen him out in a Mercedes AMG GT3, which he acquired for the second day of racing at Brands Hatch. And this Lamborghini that they are now suspecting they'll be running for the next few rounds until the Brabham is ready to go again, and we will hopefully see that back out maybe this season. It might be next year now, but this car which he shares with James Dorlin, who was the Pro-Am champion in the British GT Championship last year with Alex Malikin. It's actually an ex-Alex Malikin car as well. It was the spare car that they had in the team last year, but Paul doing a good job. In the straight line, that Lamborghini rockets away from the Beamer, but through the corners, Chris Murphy, in a car that he knows like the back of his hand, can stick with Paul Bailey, less familiar in the Lambo.
Yeah, it's a nice problem to have. Which GT3 car do I race this weekend? The Brabham is a crowd favourite, and it'd be great to see that back again this year if at all possible, but the Huracan and the AMG GT3 are also formidable machines, and he must have a good idea of the pros and cons of all of the GT3s now, which would be interesting because there's not many drivers that drive that many GT3s in one season, because all the professional drivers are normally signed up to a single manufacturer.
Yeah, no, Paul's just an am who loves supercars. He has a very substantive supercar collection, and is somebody that has always just salivated and has got some stunning cars in his collection, and as soon as a new one's available he'd probably add it to it. So we've still got this great battle going on for second and third in Group GTH. James Guess still managing to keep Phil Carter behind him in the McLaren. Then the next Mercedes up is that of John Curry. Now all of these cars, come their pit stop window, are all going to be handed over to pros, aren't they? So what we'll have is Tom Canning taking over the Aston Martin. It will be Mikey Broadhurst taking over the McLaren and Phil Keane taking over the Mercedes. But these are all 2nd, 3rd and 4th in Group GTH. The car that leads Group GTH is an am-am combination at the moment. Chris Hart will hand it over to Stephen Walton, and Stephen Walton is then an am getting ganged up against by pros later on in the race. That's the way it usually works out.
Yes, it makes for good racing, and we look forward to seeing what goes on there, because as much as this gap is growing and growing, we know that most of the time the pros are quite considerably faster than the AMs, so it could make for an interesting fight at the end of the race. We're now looking back at so that Charlotte Gilbert.
That's Gilbert Yates that started that car. So Gilbert Yates started the car, and he is still leading Group GTC at the moment, and he has caught up with a GT3 car. So that's the Group GT3 GCAT Porsche in the hands of Seamus Jennings, now getting hounded by the Group GTC leading Lamborghini that sits directly behind. Charlotte Gilbert brought that car to a win in Group GTC, driving solo in the sprint race earlier on. She'll be jumping in the pit window, which is not going to be too far away now. So Simon Orange still leading the way from Darren Young. This fight that we're looking at is for the final place inside the top 6 as well at the moment. So Gilbert Yates, new to the team Top Cats Racing this weekend, but we have seen him out racing, haven't we, in Lamborghinis in previous rounds. But his car, I think it's an engine issue with his car which has prevented him competing in it this weekend, so he's jumped into another team to enjoy the racing here at Snetterton. Why not? Great circuit, beautiful weather.
Why not? And also these cars, no matter which one you're in, or any of these any of the groups here at the GT Cup, they're all great fun to drive. And Snetterton is a unique challenge. It's got some really, really fast corners and long straights with some big braking zones, but also some technical sections, as we see the Greystone GTH Group GTH car pushing hard to stay on the back of James Guest. James Guest goes slightly wide into the Wilson hairpin, but managed to keep that position. Wilson hairpin's probably one of the only corners I'd say that remains where there are genuinely a difference in lines. Like, some drivers will prefer going in a bit deeper and going for a late apex. Some drivers veer off a lot more, and they all seem to be about the same speed.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. So some will take a normal apex, some, as you say, will V it off. Some will take that late apex to try and get the punch up towards Palmer, but it's not much of a straight to get the punch up towards Palmer, is it, before you're then into Palmer, which is slightly uphill and adverse camber on the way out of the corner, so easy to run wide. So 28 minutes still remain. Up towards Oggies comes this little squabble for 2nd and 3rd in Group GTH. James Guest was wide there, wasn't he, through Oggies as well? Didn't really make friends with the apex.
Yeah, so clearly pushing hard in the braking zones. Potentially that's where he feels that car is strong, so needs to consolidate that pace, or maybe even just if the tyres go away ever so slightly.
Had a new fastest lap of the race last time through for the number 77 McLaren in 5th position, Matt Topham. Considering it's his first weekend driving a GT3 car, I would say he's taken to it quite well. 1 minute 48.498 from Matt Topham, so yeah, that tells you everything you need to know. Matt's enjoying himself.
Yes, taken to it like what?
A duck to water, Piers.
But no, he very much has, he really has. I mean, considering it's his first race weekend in GT3, we said it earlier on, but he even said on the grid, it's a bit different to what I'm used to, and a big step up, but he's doing very, very well. I'm sure absolutely loving it in that car, and we're seeing a bit of a move as we come back past some lap traffic now. Yeah,
Simon Orange just delayed by the traffic to a degree, which means that Darren Young has begun to close in again at the wheel of the BMW, just half a second between 1st and 2nd. Can Simon Orange get a back marker between the two? Yes, he can. Brilliant driving. He really needed to clear Phil Carter there, because that then puts at least one back marker between himself and Darren Young. Not for long, because Darren Young will pick off Phil Carter and pick off James Guest, but that was important. Sometimes, isn't it, it's not about what you do, it's when you do it, isn't it? And that was perfect for Simon Orange. He would have wanted to get that car between himself and the Beamer.
Yeah, he did very well there, but Lug managed to claw that back in the braking into the Wilson hairpin as well, so did very, very well to do that. And now he's right on the back of Orange once again. I think this battle is going to rage on right until the pit stop, and they will be very, very much be vying for track position, because the Snetterton pit lane is so tight that you basically have to follow someone in and follow someone out, of course, barring any pit stop time
differences,
exactly.
Yeah.
So depending on.
I mean, the good thing for Simon Orange is that when he gives way to Tom Roach, that car will be stationary for 80 seconds, whereas the BMW of Darren Young, when he gives way to Jesse Crone, because that is a new entrant for this weekend, and it's a Pro-Am combination as well, rather than a Pro Sporting like Simon Orange and Tom Roach, they'll remain stationary for 105, so a net gain of another 25 seconds in the pit lane in reality.
That's pretty hefty difference, but we're still seeing a nice battle here between the Group GT3 Porsche and the Gilbert Yates in the Group GTC Lamborghini with a lovely late manoeuvre up the inside of the Agostini hairpin. That was close but fair racing. It was a lovely move.
It was a brilliant move, wasn't it? I thought he was brave to sneak up the inside, but also fair play to Seamus Jennings for giving him room there. If he'd have tried to squeeze, there would have been contact, but no, not at all. That was just absolutely wheel to wheel. Now we've got the race leader catching up with the lead battle for Group GTO, but Paul Bailey heads in towards the pit lane, so Paul Bailey dives for the pit lane, and he's not the only one because the pit window is open by the look of things. Everybody dives into the pit lane, and it's not surprising that they all dive in because, of course, the pros can't start the race. The pros are arguably the quicker drivers, so come in at the front end of the window, get the quicker driver in as soon as possible. The difficulty I have with that is that all of the pros are so equal, it actually ultimately doesn't make a great deal of difference.
Yes, because all the pros wrap within a tenth of each other. Yeah. You can see there a nice pat on the back there between the Paul Bailey and his pro for this weekend.
James Dorlin, isn't it?
James Dorlin, yeah. James Dorlin, they're getting all the seat padding in and out because, of course, not every human is built the same size and shape, so they have to have the different pads in the right places to make sure you can reach the pedals and that you're comfortable, and also well. I was going to use the word packaged, but that's not a very good word. Well, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Just not rattling around in the seat is words. Again, words are really failing me today, but. you know what I mean. Anyway, they're putting the seats in, taking them out. The team work hard to make sure that they practice that so that it takes as little time as possible, because you don't want to go over your allowed stoppage time, because then you're just giving time away, and it's so much harder to gain a second or 2 seconds on circuit, where it's so easy to lose a second or two in the pits.
The Audi is in, so that's Sasha Kakad, who will hand over to Hugo Cook. So they will place the seat insert in and just make sure that they're nice and tight and snug and there's no lateral movement in the driver. I think that's what you were trying to say, Piers. And that pit stop is completed already for James Wallace. He heads out the pit lane. There goes Tom Roach now behind the wheel of the McLaren. So that is a swap over there. Both Simon Orange giving way to Tom Roach and Sam Mayer-Loughnane giving way to James Wallace. It should have been 80 seconds in the pit lane.
Yeah, and actually James Wallace and looks like... which car is that? Number 67.
That's Tom Roach now.
Yeah, Tom Roach. They look like they both actually broke that white line slightly. Again, I don't want to be a snitch, but just ever so slightly coming across, because there is an advantage to getting to the left-hand side as soon as possible, but the white line is there, of course, for safety reasons. So it'll be interesting to see if the clerk of the course and the officials agree with what I just saw.
There's heading out of the pit lane Rob Bell now, so that car would have stopped for about an extra 25 seconds compared to this pair, but that was a much quicker stop for Drive Tack than it was for Orange Racing powered by JMH, because both the Mercedes and the McLaren should have been in the pit lane for the same amount of time. The McLaren came in first, it left in second. Yeah. So that's arguably, once we've cycled through all of the pit stops, going to be a change for the lead. Of course, it's not the fight for the lead at the moment because other cars haven't pitted. Gilbert Yates comes in from the lead of the race at the wheel of the number 2 Lamborghini, which now for the moment means that car number 999, Patrick Collins, who is going solo in this race, is now going to be picking up the lead. So out of the pit lane goes Hugo Cook. Thanks to Piers Pryor, who joined me in the commentary box, but he is, as I say, tasked with doing other things over the course of this weekend, so he's had to make good his escape during the pit window. And with 22 minutes remaining on the clock, Tom Roach is now just flicking his way up towards the end of the lap. I mentioned Gilbert Yates had come in, so good stint from Gilbert Yates. Top Cats Racing now just strapping Charlotte Gilbert into the car, who did a brilliant job in the sprint race earlier on today. Only running a single Lamborghini this year, Top Cats Racing, having run 2 cars last year when we had Charlotte Birch joining Charlotte Gilbert in one car and Jensen Lund joining Warren Gilbert in the other for a good chunk of the season. But back out onto the track goes the Top Cats Racing Lambo, and we'll wait and see as to what the order looks like once they've all shaken their way through. So there goes Charlotte Gilbert back out onto circuit, Doc Bush back out onto circuit, and another one again that sort of blended out before the solid white line had turned into the dotted white line. Now this is a car to watch out for. The Finnish driver, Works BMW driver, Jesse Krohn, joining Darren Young in the M4 for this weekend. And great to see Jesse Krohn added to the entry list for this one. man who has won the Rolex 24 Hour in the past in the GTLM category, a former Asian Le Mans champion as well. He was the V8 Thunder champion in the Northern European zone. Was a former champion in Formula Renault as well, back in native Finland and Estonia as well, amazingly. I didn't realise I had a Formula Renault championship in Estonia. So he's certainly a man who's done a good chunk of winning, as I say, including the one of the blue ribbon sports car events globally, the Rolex 24 Hour at Daytona in, 2020. So he'll be pushing hard to see what he can do, but that car had to stop for longer in the pit lane due to others, compared to others, so it's down in 5th position at the moment, and has got the car of James Dorlin behind him, but there is a lap difference between BMW and Lamborghini. Run you down through the full order very shortly. Now we've started to get some of the Group GTH cars coming in. There's one of them, so that's David Frankland, who's given way to Ed Bridle. So 24/7 just pushing the car back. He was... That's it. Now the timer's clicked sufficiently because they're right away at pit lane entry, so they've got to time it right so that the car is exiting the pit lane at the right time. Now back to Group GTH and the sharp end. Phil Keane has now taken over the number 96 Mercedes and is hounding Tom Canning, who has taken over the number 82 Aston Martin. So this will be for second and third in Group GTH at the moment. In fact, have they come into the pits, these two? They have shown, no, they haven't come into the pits. So it's James Guess and John Curry still busy beavering away, because now they come into the pit lane for the driver changes to take place. Mikey Broadhurst there, swinging his arms around. He's suited and booted and ready to receive Phil Carter, who comes into the pit lane this time through as well. So into the pit lane comes Philip Carter. Good stint from him. He's had a busy old race, getting ever quicker. Qualified on pole in Group GTH at Brands Hatch, but the race didn't quite happen. Tim Docker is now done with driving duties. He has handed over the Paddock Motorsport McLaren to Jordan Albert, who it's good to see back in the British GT Championship, former BRDC F4 runner. But for James Wallace, he is in the lead of the race at the moment and is pulling away from Tom Roach in second place. James Wallace, fastest lap of the race last time through, 1 minute 46.529 for the Drive Tac machine. Drive Tac powered by Track Focus to give it its correct title. Through and over the start finish line goes James Wallace. He is the race leader at this stage and sets the fastest lap, 1 minute 46.551 on that occasion. That is a 3.2 second lead between himself and Tom Roach in second place. Third is number 77 Marcus Clutton. Fourth is the number 9 BMW of Jesse Krohn. Fifth is a car that hasn't stopped yet, so fifth is the Group GTH leading car in the hands of Chris Hart, but that car has not stopped as yet, so it is up in 5th position. And 6th is the Group GTC leading car, which is now in the hands of Charlotte Gilbert, the number 2 Lamborghini. 7th is 27, which is Rob Bell. 8th is number 33, which is Greg Caton, now at the wheel of GCAT Racing Porsche. 9th is number 999 Patrick Collins. And has that car stopped as yet? Yes, it has. And completing the top 10 is Chris Murphy at the wheel of the BMW. So he will be leading Group GTO at the moment because he stopped for less time in the pit lane than the James Dorlin / Paul Bailey Lamborghini did. So we'll keep an eye on that, because I would imagine James Dorlin, the pro driver, should catch back up with Chris Murphy. Back out of pit lane, still in the same order as they were when they came in. Mikey Broadhurst and Phil Keane have now taken over McLaren and Mercedes respectively. So let's see where they feed back out, but our Group GTH leading car still has not pitted as yet. It'll need to come in before too much longer. There can be no more than 15 minutes remaining in the race when the number 69 Mercedes comes in. So in a minute and a half's time, that car will have to be in the pit lane. Well, it's in the second sector at the moment, so it's somewhere in the middle of the lap. So I would imagine the Group GTH leading number 69 Mercedes that's running in 5th overall will be in at the end of this lap. Now, the only car that we've lost in the race so far was Matty Evans, because we saw his big spin up at Ritchie's corner. We saw the Lamborghini get going again, but he did bring it into the pits at the end of that lap, so that is, by the look of things, a retirement for them, and that is a bitter pill to swallow, because that had been a very consistent car throughout the course of this season and was leading the Group GTC Championship standings coming into this weekend, and was actually second overall in the championship Now this car I think we'll see into the pits this time through. So this is the Group GTH leading Mercedes, heading through Coreham and up towards Murray's. Pit window closes in 30 seconds, so there's no time to do another lap on top of this one. So Chris Hart will have to be in at the end of this lap, and indeed he is. Yet bang on cue, and with about 20 seconds to spare, heads into the pit lane. So Stephen Walton will take over that car. Now they should still, because it is a am combination, and therefore they will have to stop for a shorter period of time in the pit lane, just 60 seconds. They should be able to still hang on to the lead of Group GTH, but all that's going to happen then is that Stephen Walton is going to have all of the pros ganging up against him, and as he will shortly squeeze his way into the cockpit of the Mercedes, he will know the task in hand, because this is largely what's been happening all season really. Chris Hart doing the hard work in the early stages, and Stephen Walton doing equally as hard work and trying to make sure he maintains the lead advantage in Group GTH, but he's come so close on so many occasions, and the pros always just seem to catch him on the final lap and pick him off, which is such a shame. So, door closed. It's only, say, a short stop for that Mercedes. Chris Hart, who's also been racing a GT3 Mercedes in recent weeks. In fact, was at Donington last weekend racing the GT3 Mercedes and didn't have a great deal of luck getting out the car, looking fairly cool. So Jesse Krohn in the 4th place BMW, still being hounded by a car that is a lap adrift of him, which is James Dorlin at the wheel of the unrestricted GT3 Lamborghini. And Jesse Krohn, I think, doing the correct thing there, just letting the car go through. Yes, you're not on the same lap, but it doesn't matter. Let the car go through. It's quicker than you at this stage of the race, and you're not fighting it. Greg Caton there just going past Charlotte Gilbert, so that would have been 4 position. That was for 6th and 7th place, but again, Charlotte Gilbert not needing to worry about letting the Porsche by, because she runs in Group GTC. The car that's just overtaken her is a GT3 car, so matters not. Now the next thing we need to try and keep an eye on is the relative gap between GTH cars. Not so much this lap, because of course Stephen Walton in the Group GTH leading car has only just come out of the pit lane, but we do need to keep an eye on the gap between that Mercedes and Tom Canning's Aston Martin next time through, because that in reality would be 1st in Group GTH, 2nd in Group GTH, but I suspect that gap will close up, so we'll try and keep an eye on what the relative gap is between the pair of them. 13 minutes to go. Tom Roach pushing hard in 2nd place, but James Wallace is now nearly 3 seconds up the road and is just edging away all of the time, not by much. The gap actually came down by 1/10 of a second on the previous lap. This time through, let's just have a quick look. It might come down again, you know, this time through. So Tom Roach goes through, and the gap goes out, comes down by another couple of tenths of a second at the most. So it's 2 3/4 seconds between 1st and 2nd place. James Wallace pushing hard, sneaks up the inside of Jordan Albert's car, which is what Tom Roach, the Welshman, will be tasked with next, putting a lap on the Group GTH car in the hands of the pro. But for Tom Roach, he's going to catch that car round through Palmer, so he's going to have to wait to get on the throttle coming out of the corner, and now he can squeeze his way through and past. New fastest lap of the race has just gone to James Dorlin, down in 8th position in the Group GTO number 28 Lamborghini Huracan. 1 minute 45.629 from James Dorlin. That car leads Group GTO at the moment. Brilliant lap from the Yorkshireman. But brilliant drive so far from Sam Mayer-Loughnane in the early stages. And James Wallace, who's taken over the car, because Tom Roach at the wheel of the Orange Racing powered by JMH number 67 McLaren is pushing hard, but can't close the gap. Now this is another Group GTH battle. This is Mikey Broadhurst fighting away with Phil Keane, 2 drivers who know each other well. Been racing GT cars for a very good number of years. Mikey Broadhurst also racing in GT4 Mercedes in the British GT Championship. Phil Keane regular in British GT in the likes of Porsches and BMWs and more latterly Lamborghinis. Partnered up with John Curry again for this weekend, and the 2 of them are fighting over what should be the final spot on the podium in Group GTH. So 3rd and 4th place being occupied by the McLaren at the moment, but the Make Happen Racing Zipcat supported Merc of Phil Keane more than keen to try and work his way through if he can. So the difficulty is that there is no advantage. Oh, and that is Chris Murphy who's had an off. Now, is that a problem with the BMW, and is he retiring it? He's on the grass for a long period of time, which suggests that may well be the case. And yet Chris Murphy has come out of Palmer and is going to retire the car onto the grass on the infield section. So that was a car that was before the pit window, right at the sharp end of Group GTO, but I'm afraid that something has gone wrong with the BMW, and something goes wrong with the other BMW. It's going to be some sort of stop-go penalty, is it? Yes, it is. Stop-go penalty for the Century Motorsport BMW. So Jesse Krohn stops the car, instantly accelerates his way back out onto circuit, but I'm afraid that car is not going to be fourth anymore. It's going to have dropped down to probably fifth. I think it might just be one place it's lost, because I think it had enough in hand between itself and the GCAT Racing Porsche of Greg Caton, so I think it's just the one place lost, as Rob Bell in the Optimum Motorsport McLaren now, number 27 car, would have picked up fourth. Now I was going to keep an eye on that lead gap in Group GTH, wasn't I? So the number 69 Mercedes compared to Tom Canning's car. There is going to be, let's say, 25 seconds between the pair of them. 25 seconds between first and second in Group GTH at the moment. Third in GTH is looking tasty as well, as Mikey Broadhurst is feeling the pinch from Phil Keane. They've just been passed by James Wallace, the race leader, so that's allowed the two Group GTH cars to get ever closer to each other, but they need to watch their mirrors. They've also got Tom Roach, who's second on the road, beginning to close in on them and wanting to place a lap upon them, so they're having their own little fight, and they need to be conscious that they've now got the quicker cars and the overall race leaders trying to side their way through and past as well. Phil Keane almost prized the door open there, but Mikey Broadhurst just about got it covered off in time so that the Mercedes couldn't nip up the inside of the number 14 Greystone GT McLaren. So 8.5 minutes of the race still remain. Phil Keane will be throwing everything at it, but Mikey Broadhurst being a pro as well, pros tend not to make many mistakes. So it does make it very, very difficult to try and sneak through at any point. And at the moment, again, as ever, with the balance of the performance of these cars all being equalised by the Butte Motorsport and GT Cup technical team, nobody really has an advantage. You've just got to pick your moment and try and sneak your way through if the opportunity presents itself. And sometimes that's all to do with where you are when there's traffic coming up, whether it's traffic you're lapping or whether it be even the quicker cars trying to get past you. If you've got the opportunity, grab it. But no, they're still nose to tail. Now this is still the Group GTH leading car, so Chris Hart doing a good job in the early stages. The Make Cabin Racing Mercedes now in the hands of Stephen Walton. So Stephen, the last lap time from him was a 2-minute 2.9. The last lap time from Tom Canning was a 1-minute 57.6. So you remember that gap that I was telling you about, which was the best part of 25 seconds between first and second in Group GTH. Well, it is now going to be down to something like 17 seconds, I think, now that they've completed another lap again. So it's getting chipped away at, and as I say so many times this year, Chris Hart and Stephen Walton have driven the wheels off the Mercedes, but you know, these are guys that are busy with day jobs and race for fun, whereas the pro drivers are racing something almost every single weekend and testing and coaching midweek, and you're always going to get them quicker than you because you know that's their very nature of their job. They are the professional drivers, and it's just so frustrating that no matter what they do, they never quite seem to just have enough in hand to hang on to the lead of Group GTH. Have they taken a win in Group GTH this year? I would have thought they would have at least one. Yes, they did, the very opening round of the championship season, but that was at Donington Park quite some time ago, so they'll be very keen indeed to see whether they can claim another win. Yeah, what was it, 1st of April was the last time they'd have claimed a win in Group GTH. Now, Marcus Clutton dives at the inside of Phil Keane, so that's the Enduro Motorsport McLaren that runs third overall on the road. Then up the inside of Mikey Broadhurst heading round through Williams. So McLaren 720S placing a lap on the 520. Down the Bentley straight, you can also see that James Dorlin, the man who has scooped up the fastest lap in the race at the wheel of the Group GTO Lamborghini, is not too far away. James Dorlin is running in 8th place overall at the moment, but is a lap off the lead. Car that he knows well, having raced it to Pro-Am victory in the British GT Championship last year in the GT3 category. Or was it Silver-Am category? But of course it is running de-restricted for this weekend, so no air restrictors on that car, so it's punching out some serious power. Hugo Cook in the Audi. No ill effects following the fact that that car started the race, what was it, 6-7 laps late? So the Audi is still running in last position at the moment, 18th place. It will move up to 17th shortly because of Chris Murphy's retirement at the wheel of the BMW a few laps ago, so it will pick up a few more places, but is 7 laps off the lead at the moment because of its delayed start, following whatever happened at the first attempt to get round 10 underway. After the stop-go penalty, Jesse Krohn has now hung on to 5th position at the wheel of the BMW and is not lapping any quicker than Rob Bell's number 27 McLaren ahead, so I'm not sure we're going to see the BMW catching up to try and steal a place away. The race leader in the meantime, for the 23rd time, heading down in towards Brundle and Nelson. 4 minutes remaining on the clock. James Wallace on lap number 23 at the moment. Had a 2-second gap between himself and Tom Roach last time through, which was probably an extra tenth more than it was, or a couple of tenths more than it was on the previous lap, so it's been ebbing and flowing a little bit. And then a big mistake for James Wallace, the race leader, round through Corham. The drive tack with track focus Mercedes spins 2 or 3 times onto the grass, all on the infield. He hooks up a gear again and gets going. Now, had a puncture in the race earlier on. Was that a tyre problem there, or was that just pushing the very limits? Needs to be careful because he doesn't want to fill those radiator ducts full of grass, but all seems to be fine. Maybe it was just pushing too hard and touching the grass as he heads over the start-finish line. That's going to put Tom Roach into the lead of the race, and you can see, yeah, there is grass in the radiator ducts. Not too much grass, but there's something there. Now, 3 minutes to go, it's a warm day. I think he might have got away with that one because usually the grass would absolutely fill the radiator ducts, but I think the fact that the car was sliding sideways for a good chunk rather than just going forwards into the grass, that's probably saved him a pit stop to get grass taken out of those radiator ducts. So I don't think it's probably going to have a huge effect on the engine temperatures, but he'll certainly be watching them. It does mean now, though, that number 67, which claimed the win earlier on today in the hands of Tom Roach driving solo in the sprint race, well, it looks as though himself and Simon Orange, who started behind the wheel of the car, are going to win round 10 of the championship because only 2.5 minutes to go, and they now enjoy a 12-second lead from James Wallace in second place, who I think has hung on to second. The Dusty Pirellis should have been able to be worked clean again before Marcus Clutton closed in at the wheel of the number 77 McLaren, so I think it will only be the one place lost, but it's the win lost, and that's going to hurt for sure. So we'll be starting the penultimate lap this next time through. It really depends as to how quickly Tom Roach gets over the start-finish line, because he's lapping about 1 minute 46s, 1 minute 47s at the moment. Yeah, he'll be over the start-finish line in less than 15 seconds, so it will be penultimate lap of the race, I think, this time through. So through he goes over the start-finish line. Yeah, there's 1 minute and 50 to go when he came over the start-finish line. And what's going on in Group GTH, I hear you ask? Well, Stephen Walton is now 7 seconds ahead of Tom Canning, so Tom Canning is on his way at the moment. However, Phil Keane has been able to finally unpick Mikey Broadhurst, so the second Make Happen Racing Mercedes is now ahead of the Greystone GT McLaren, so that has been a change for order. That will put the number 96 car of Phil Keane and John Curry now up to third in Group GTH, and down to fourth goes the number 14 car that Phil Carter started, that Mikey Broadhurst took over in the pit stop window. So they're just going to miss out on a trophy in this one. Fourth in class, or their group at the moment. The Group GTO win is looking as though it's going the way of James Dorlin, following the retirement of Chris Murphy. And of course, poor old Ian Loggy in the other Group GTO car didn't even get to the first corner before problems befell him, which brought about the red flag. Now here is Tom Canning. This is the car that I've said we need to keep an eye on where he is relative to the Mercedes. He has been closing, ever closing, and that last time through he had picked up the lead of Group GTH, so poor old Stephen Walton has been picked off again in the closing stages. We didn't see it, but the Make Happen Racing Mercedes is no longer leading Group GTH, I'm afraid to say. So down to second for the number 69 Mercedes, but for Tom Roach, he is about to thread his way out of Murray's. 10 seconds remaining on the clock. It's going to be nip and tuck as to when he gets to the start-finish line. Are we going to see the checkered this time through? No, we don't. There's literally 2 seconds remaining on the clock as he comes over the start-finish line. So on to the final lap of the race. This time through goes Tom Roach. And after what was a really difficult start to the season for Simon Orange and Tom Roach, with the car having a hefty old shunt into the pit wall at Donington Park, which caused a huge amount of damage to the car. They'd already had in the Asian Le Mans series a chassis get written off as a brake disc exploded and actually damaged the chassis to the degree that it was no longer viable. So it's been a difficult start to the season for them, but for Tom Roach and Simon Orange, looks as though their luck may finally have turned. They have claimed not a single overall win so far this season until earlier on today. Their best result in a pit stop race was at Brands Hatch, where they finished second overall in the race. They did win their group, but it was a Group GTO won, the car that won on that occasion, which was the Morgan and Marcus Short Mosler. But this will be their first overall win in a pit stop race of the 2023 championship season so far. So down the Bentley Straight for the final time. Car that's behind them on the road is the car that's leading Group GTC and has done all race, I think, whether it be in the hands of Gilbert Yates or Charlotte Gilbert as it is now. But there's only really 3 more corners to go. The Bombhole, Corham and Murray's between Simon Orange and Tom Roach, and their first overall win in a pit stop race. But of course, remember, it is their second overall win because they claimed their first one this morning in the sprint race when Tom Roach brought the number 67 car to victory. So out of the final corner, over the start-finish line, and it is going to be a win in round 10 of the 2023 GT Cup Championship for the pairing of Simon Orange and Tom Roach in their orange powered by JMH Racing McLaren that come through to claim the win. There comes Charlotte Gilbert and Gilbert Yates's Lamborghini over the start-finish line to win their group. There now is James Wallace just heading through shot as well, so that'll be the car that picks up second overall. There's Marcus Clutton, partnered up with Matt Topham, who scooped up third overall. And for Tom Canning, partnered up with James Guess, that is a good result for them because they are the Group GTH Championship leaders and lie 4th overall in the championship standings after Brands Hatch coming into this weekend, and they will go away with a win in Group GTH. So brilliant stuff for them, having finished second in the sprint race earlier on today. Rob Bell and Mark Ratcliffe take the checkered flag. That's Darren Young and Jesse Krohn's car. Then the number 69 car of Stephen Walton comes through. Chris Hart doing the hard work in the early stages. That will finish second in Group GTH. Be inside the top 10 as well, so that's a good result for them. And then we should get the next few cars coming through, which will be Russ Lindsay. Patrick Collins, I should say, who has driven solo in the 999 Porsche to finish in 11th place. The John Curry and Phil Keane Mercedes through. Philip Carter and Michael Broadhurst also working their way through. There goes Greg Caton. Seamus Jennings having started in the GCAT Racing Porsche, and Ed Bridle comes through. David Franklin having taken over from David Franklin earlier on. Jordan Albert, Tim Docker's car through, and then the next of the car through will be Doc Bush, and then I think probably the only other car then to take the checkered flag will be the car that started 7 laps late, which will be Sasha Kakag and Hugo Cook, who come towards the checkered flag now. So we lost 2 cars along the way. We lost Chris Murphy with the BMW having had problems out on circuit, and we lost Matty Evans after his spin up at Ritchie's corner. He instantly brought the Lamborghini in towards the pit lane. Let's confirm the results for you then for round 10 of the 2023 GT Cup Championship. It's a win for Simon Orange and Tom Roach in their McLaren, with the Mercedes of James Wallace and Sam Mayer-Loughnane second, unfortunately, after their spin out of the lead. Matt Topham and Marcus Clutton were third, ahead of Mark Ratcliffe and Rob Bell, with Darren Young and Jesse Krohn finishing in 5th place, ahead of Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton, who was 6th place. Gilbert Yates and Charlotte Gilbert won Group GTC, they were 7th. Paul Bailey and James Dorlin won Group GTO as they were 8th. And in 9th place it was Group GTH winners, James Guess and Tom Canning. Stephen Walton and Chris Hart finished as the last pairing inside the top 10, and then just outside of the top 10 it was Patrick Collins driving solo, who finished in 11th place out of John Curry and Phil Keane, Phil Carter and Mikey Broadhurst. Then it was Tim Docker and Jordan Albert, with Doc Bush finishing in 15th place. David Franklin and Ed Bridle were 16th, and the last car home, Sasha Kagad and Hugo Cook, who were in 17th position. So that's the way that they finished in the GT Cup Championship round 10.